Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date stories in the global financial world.
Some restaurants in San Francisco, California will take another step forward when the city permits outdoor seating for the first time since ordering a shelter-in-place order back in March to stem the spread of the novel coronavirus. Mayor London Breed announced that she was moving up the timetable for allowing restaurants to resume outdoor seating. Some of the rules the city has put in place include limiting tables to 6 customers, except for members of the same household, face covering requirements for customers until they are seated and any time they leave the table, and limited access to entering the restaurant except for going to place an order. At Canela Bistro and Wine Bar in the Castro, owner and executive chef Matt Schuster said he and his staff are excited to resume service beyond just takeout. Canela will use 3 tables all 6 feet apart and on the sidewalk in front of the restaurant to serve a maximum of 10 customers. His staff members, who were wearing gloves and masks, were making final measurements to prepare for the diners. Schuster said he plans to apply for additional space on the sidewalk so that he can fit another couple of tables for more customers, but for now, he's fine with just 3. Not all restaurants across the city are jumping in right away. Some have expressed concerns about San Francisco weather, which can be windy and brisk during this time of year. Additionally, there are safety concerns, meaning extra staff for security and for monitoring tables.
The Democratic U.S. presidential candidate Joe Biden took a rare trip during the COVID pandemic to attend a small roundtable discussion in Philadelphia on reopening the economy. His staff has grappled with how to campaign safely during the virus pandemic. Since widespread shutdowns began this spring, Biden has only left his Delaware home a handful of times, but has not traveled farther than Philadelphia. He will face Trump in November the 3rd election. Biden also faces challenges in fashioning his own district's economic message. Even while he leads President Donald Trump nationally in a head-to-head matchup, polls in early June showed the president was largely more trusted on handling of the economy. The former vice president has called for an ambitious set of federal programs to lift the country out of recession and has repeated a pledge to release a large-scale recovery plan soon.
Chinese tech giant Huawei emphasized that it is a private company which can be trusted with sensitive data while building the UK's 5G network. Huawei has bought full-page adverts in many national newspapers as it tries to speak directly to the British public and assert that it is independent from the Chinese state and does not share sensitive data. Huawei vowed it will continue to help bring fast and reliable mobile and full-fibre broadband networks to Britain, outlining the company's commitment to help Britain achieve its gigabit broadband goal. In an interview with China Global Television Network, Huawei's UK's Vice President Jeremy Thompson said, Huawei, as it always be, remains a privately owned company and is independent from any other state. The UK government is undertaking a fresh security review of the company, with Prime Minister Boris Johnson under pressure to further reduce Huawei's role in the 5G network, having announced already a 35% cap on its involvement. In January, Huawei was allowed to play a limited role in the UK's 5G networks, following a major review by the government. At the time, British intelligence agencies said they found no evidence the company was used for spying by authorities in Beijing, but it was labelled a high-risk vendor and only allowed a maximum market share to 35% in the UK's non-core networks, which include less sensitive aspects of 5G technology, such as masts and antenna. In recent months, some British lawmakers, mainly from Johnson's Conservative Party, have called for Huawei's role to be scaled back. There's also pressure from the other side of the Atlantic. US President Donald Trump has called on the UK to ban Huawei from its 5G networks, something the US, Australia, and New Zealand have already done. For the UK government, the Huawei issue has become a difficult dilemma. There's the pressure from Washington and some colleagues to consider. On the other hand, Huawei's 5G technology is some of the most advanced and cost-effective in the world. According to research at Anders Analysis, banning Huawei could cost the UK's network industry $1.9 billion and push back the rollout of 5G in the country by 2 years. For now, UK ministers are staying tight-lipped on the issue as they weigh up their stance. As for Huawei, Thompson said it is focusing on more investment in the country, despite the growing pressure.
Argentina's President Alberto Fernandez announced Argentina will take over bankrupt soy crushing giant Vicentin with the aim of saving jobs and protecting the country's food exporting sector. Argentina is the #1 world exporter of soy meal livestock feed, and Vicentin is one of the country's main producers. It was founded in 1929 and was Argentina's top exporter of processed soy and an iconic brand in the domestic food market. Vicentin has a joint venture with Glencore plc called Renova, which has a major crushing plant in Argentina's Santa Fe province. Renova has remained operational since Vicentin defaulted on its bank loans and supplies around the turn of the year. Argentina exported $12.2 billion in soy oil and soy meal last year. Soy-based livestock feed manufactured along with the banks of the Parana River, Argentina's grain superhighway, is used to fatten hogs and cattle from Europe to Southeast Asia, while soy oil is used in cooking and to make biofuels. Argentina is facing a grim economic picture after defaulting on its own sovereign bonds last month. Gross domestic product is seen shrinking 9.5% in 2020, according to a recent poll of analysts by the central bank. Activity has gotten walloped by a nationwide lockdown that started March the 20th against the pandemic.
Exactly 100 days after the first coronavirus case was confirmed in New York City, some workers began returning to jobs in a first phase of reopening, from a citywide shutdown to battle the epidemic that killed nearly 22,000 of its residents. UC Benihamo, who owns Maltese Florist Flower Shop near Columbus Circle in Manhattan, said customers will be required to wear face masks and only one person will be allowed inside the store. People who had been staying home for months boarded subways and buses as the most populous US city began a hopeful journey toward economic recovery. But much of the city was not full of people. New York City, by far the hardest hit US city, reported the rate of people testing positive for the coronavirus fell to a new low of 3%, well below its threshold for reopening of 15%, according to the city's mayor, Bill de Blasio. As some 400,000 workers head back to 32,000 construction sites, wholesale and manufacturing centers, and some retail sites across the city, de Blasio urged them to wear face masks and use social distancing to keep COVID-19 cases on a downward trend, particularly those who use mass transit to get to work. Free face masks and hand sanitizer were being handed out by 800 school safety agents on duty in subway stations. To increase spacing between passengers, the city is opening 20 miles of new bus routes and new bus lanes from June through October, de Blasio said. 10 days after thousands of protesters, many without masks, swarmed New York Street for daily marches against racism, following the May 25th death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, police custody. De Blasio said he was cautiously monitoring the virus's spread to be sure reopening can continue and eventually bring customers back to hair salons, restaurants, and other businesses.
Belgium allowed almost all businesses to reopen, including restaurants, but social distancing measures must remain. One of the famous Grand Place restaurants has left one table and two empty, and waiters were protected by masks or plastic shields. In some of them, customers could scan a QR code for the menu. Sitting at the Roy d'Espagne terrace, Ian Payne enjoyed his first drink in a restaurant after Belgium eased almost 12 weeks of lockdown. Security measures did not deter 39-year-old Caroline Michelis, who said the measures were for everyone's safety. In contrast, Florence van der Hoek, age 68, said the masks and the emptiness of the Grand Place, usually packed with tourists, were a frightening sight. With social distancing measures in place and no tourists due to border closures, Jean-Philippe Bosman, the owner of Roy d'Espagne, said he was expecting a financial deficit for the first month of reopening. The Belgian Central Bank Governor, Pierre Wunsch, said Belgium is set for 3 years of lost growth from COVID-19, and as the 2021-2022 recovery will fail to make up for a 9% decline forecast for this year. The bank put the cost of the lockdown from mid-March at $53 billion in terms of lost income.
The Chinese embassy in Singapore issued the first batch of travel visas to local residents after the launch of a fast-lane arrangement between the two countries to facilitate essential business and official travels. The arrangement will allow eligible personnel who pass COVID-19 tests before departure and after arrival to start their journey in both countries without a 14-day quarantine period. The first batch of fast-lane visas were granted to 3 senior executives of a Singaporean company. They will need to go to 5 designated local hospitals for nucleic acid testing within 48 hours before their scheduled departure on June 14th. Currently, the Chinese embassy in Singapore will only grant travel visas to officials and businessmen who have invitation letters from provincial-level foreign affairs offices and commercial departments, state organs and state enterprises under the administration of the central government. According to an agreement between China and Singapore, no more than 600 applications will be processed every day on both sides.
Business Review, your daily source for the most critical stories in the financial world. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.